Welcome to this week's episode of the Cyberwork with Infosec podcast. Each week I sit down with a different industry thought leader and we discuss the latest cybersecurity trends, how these trends are affecting the work of Infosec professionals, while offering tips for those trying to break in or move up the ladder in the cybersecurity industry. One major issue in the cybersecurity industry that Infosec has been actively promoting is bringing a more diverse population into the cybersecurity workforce. We've offered scholarships that are extended to female cybersecurity professionals, people of color, military professionals, and graduating college students, among others. On this podcast, I've been happy and proud to speak to a number of the female cybersecurity professionals about their security journeys and the pitfalls in the industry that they've weathered to overcome. So today I'm very, very proud to be speaking to Mary Galloway, the CEO and founding member of Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, a Northern Virginia-based but worldwide in its reach 501c3 nonprofit organization that is passionate about helping and empowering women to succeed in the cybersecurity field. Mary is going to tell us about Women's Society of Cyberjutsu's mission, its successes, and its plans for the future. Mary Galloway is the CEO and founding board member of the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu, WSC, one of the fastest growing 501c3 nonprofit cybersecurity communities dedicated to bringing more women and girls to cyber. WSC provides its members with the resources and support required to enter and advance as a cybersecurity professional. Mary began her cyber career with Accenture, where she excelled as a network engineer. With over 9 years of information technology, 8 of which are in cybersecurity, her experience spans network designs, risk assessments, vulnerability assessments, incident response, and policy development across governmental and commercial industries. She holds a variety of technical management certifications, CISSP, GIAC, CCNA, etc., as well as a bachelor degree in computer information systems from Columbus State University and a master's of science in information systems from Strayer University. Mary is currently a resident of Las Vegas, working to secure the gaming industry of the Southwest as a senior security architect. She regularly contributes to content to security blogs and training companies outside the country, as well as an adjunct professor for UMUC. Outside of being a geek, Mary enjoys arts, puzzles, and Legos, and you can find her on Twitter at Mary Galloway. That's MARIGALLOWAY. Mary, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Great. So to start at the very beginning, this is the question we ask everybody. How and when did you first get started in computers and cybersecurity? Were these things sort of always an interest in your life? It sounds like you identify as a lifelong geek. Is this something that came later, or?
So throughout my life growing up, my folks would give me computers and things like that. I remember one time I got this super old school computer where you could look up the dates for the past 200 years on it. And so I would always look up my birthday on this thing. It was, I don't even remember when this was or what this thing was, but it was this really cool computer system they had bought. And at the time I didn't really think anything of it. And then I actually wanted to be an architecture major. So I went to school for architecture.
Okay.
In high school, I dealt with AutoCAD and using computer systems to design and all that.
Sure.
And so it kind of just flowed for me to go into my bachelor's degree program in computers.
Okay.
That's kind of where it got started. I actually was doing database administration. That was my major because I wanted to build stuff out in Access. Don't know why, but at the time, that's what I wanted to do.
Seemed like a good idea, yeah.
Right. Thinking back on it, it probably still would have been, since we're coming full circle with security.
Sure.
In that world. But that's kind of where that took off.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's always been a thing. I've always loved to build stuff. And so that's where that challenge part comes. And doing security, there's always this challenge because we're trying to fix something that wasn't implemented originally.
Yeah, there's a puzzle solving element to it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some of the highlights and big transitions of your security career? You know, we're always sort of trying to break this down for people who are just trying to get into cybersecurity. But so what jumps did you make in terms of, experiences or knowledge or research or education or job changes that sort of took you from your early interests to where you are now?
So like you mentioned, I started as a network engineer. And so I was dealing with routers and switches and encryption devices. For one of those big 3-letter agencies in the government. And I went to a training class and the instructor, he showed us how to pull up router configs on the internet in plain text. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's probably not a good thing. And so that week, it was a Security Plus class too. And that week it was like, oh, I probably should go on this side of the field versus this side. And I thought it was interesting that he was able to pull that stuff up so quickly.
Okay.
And see that. And so that's kind of one of the ways that jump started me into going down the role of ethical hacking and penetration testing. The next big jump was when I started working for the Department of the Army. I was still in a networking role, but they forced me to do the accreditation and certification for our JWICS level systems.
Okay.
And so I had never really, I had done some stuff in security, but doing that really, really helped me understand, vulnerabilities, how to configure routers and switches, how to do documentation for like training plans and testing documents. And so that really just kind of skyrocketed me into wanting to go more into cybersecurity and into the security side, mostly the offensive side of the industry.
Okay. Were there particular, did you like study for certs? Were there like particular schooling things that sort of were foundational for you?
So with the government, you have to have your Security Plus from most places with the DoD 8570. So that kind of laid the groundwork. We were a Cisco office, so I ended up doing a lot of Cisco stuff.
Okay.
And what I really liked about the CCNA security, which I don't know if it's still called that now, but
they've
got like a million certifications
as well, and I'm supposed to stay on top of that, and I'm confused.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's changing again. Anyway,
they had the stuff that I learned in that class was really, really beneficial, and so I like boot camps. I think they're cool. I think they serve a purpose, but for me, I'm more of a self-studier.
Okay.
And so I picked up the book, started reading, started doing some labs. I was like, oh. And I was able to use that stuff that I learned in the security class or the CCNA security on the job. And then as I've gone through, I have a lot of certifications. I tend to get them if my job requires them.
Yep.
Or if it's something I'm interested in learning more about.
Okay.
So a lot of my certifications are going to be on the offensive side. So pen testing.
Yep.
Configuring things like that, CEH, all of that good jazz.
Okay. That's some lighting issues. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in the room that like has a light that goes off if you
motion sensor. Yeah. So you're not going to believe it. We had a previous guest have that same thing happen. We've come around that many times that this happens regularly.
But yeah. So
okay.
I use that as my foundation, and then I expand outside of that.
Okay. I think one thing that's also noteworthy, we haven't seen with a lot of cybersecurity professionals, is that you sort of you have sort of equal footing in both the sort of networking side and the security side. And can you tell me a little bit about how that's sort of influenced, both of those disciplines in your interests?
So I think it's really important. If you don't know what systems you have, if you don't know how they operate, how they work, it's really difficult to try to secure them or figure out what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
Can it be done? Yeah. I know a lot of people that have come in without a networking background to do the technical stuff, and they've been super successful, but they had to work really, really hard to do that. And so having that networking foundation has helped me better do architect systems here, like where I'm at now. Helped me understand the vulnerabilities associated with having these particular systems together, understanding how VLANs work and how we can do segmentation, and helping the organizations just be more cognizant and better about their security processes and their standards. So it's important. You don't have to do help desk. People are like, oh, you got to do a help desk job. Will a help desk job work? Yeah, maybe. But if you can get into network administration, systems administration, any of those areas for a little bit, it's definitely worth it. And it's definitely going to give you a leg up when it's time to move into a security role.
Yeah, that's worth noting that there's a lot more input points than people think. You don't just go from help desk right into security necessarily, or you can, but you don't have to.
You don't have to, right?
Right. So you have a lot of plates spinning at any given time. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about what your day-to-day schedule looks like? You're a senior architect for the Southwestern gaming industry. You're an associate professor. You're the CEO of Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. Like,
I do a lot of other.
Are you a fan of sleep at all? Or
early on, I wasn't.
Okay.
I can sleep anywhere at any time of the day.
Okay.
It doesn't matter where we're
Okay.
at.
Yep.
But honestly, it's taken a long time to figure out a routine for
Yeah.
doing all that stuff, because I
Sure.
also
Sure.
do like other volunteer things, and
Mm-hmm.
then I like to do the arts and crafts stuff, so I have to find time for that. But
Absolutely.
I try to keep my day job separate from the other stuff. So with the
Okay.
University of Maryland, I only teach every other semester.
I see.
So that's not too big of an issue. And then I do a lot of that stuff in the evening anyway, so that I
Okay.
can talk to the students and be available for them if they need assistance.
And what classes are they again?
So it just depends. My next
Okay.
class is network security,
Okay.
which is it helps you prepare for Security Plus.
Mm-hmm.
The last semester I taught a class on trends in cybersecurity, and so the students went through like building out AWS instances and
Oh, sure.
talking about IoT devices and AI, and just kind of touching on each of those different topics for 8 weeks. So that was a cool class. WSC, it's a little bit harder to separate because I'm on the West Coast, so I'm 3 hours
Yep.
behind.
Yep. Yeah, sure.
Folks like to have those conversations at like 9 a.m. Well, it's 6 a.m. for me. And so
Yep.
it's a little bit harder to manage, but my current job, they're pretty flexible with when I need to do stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it works out. But yeah, I don't know when I find time to do anything, but I love to have wine and Hendrix in the evening after work.
Perfect. Oh my God. Yeah, no, that solves a lot of problems.
It really does.
Yeah. So did you just sort of keep sort of acquiring projects until you felt you'd hit a maximum density and you're like, I can't deal with any more of this? Like, how do you because I think a lot of people, like, they get sort of flustered after doing two things, or they try to do too many things and it falls apart. But it sounds like you've really sort of like mastered a thing here. So, like, I'm sure people would want to know more about that.
I think what works for me is, so I have a very supportive husband.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the Army for 13 and a half years. And so a lot of that time that I did a lot of this stuff, he was either deployed or off in the field somewhere doing military stuff. And so it kind of worked out to where I could do some of this other stuff that I wanted to. But he's been, since he's been out, he's been really supportive. And I think for folks to be able to do these kind of things, you have to have a support system.
Yes.
You have to have friends and family that, they're going to encourage you to be involved and encourage you to help, and they'll want to help with you and do those kind of things. Otherwise, it makes it really, really difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So I keep sort of wending off here, but before we get into the main topic of today's podcast, I'm really curious about your work on the cybersecurity architecture of the gaming industry of the Southwest. I mean, that seems like an enormous project. So what is the scope exactly of such a project? And what's the jurisdiction of this? Is this all the casinos in the American Southwest?
No, it's just one specific one.
Okay.
Which can't really say.
No, of course.
But it's an interesting dynamic. So this is my first job outside of the government.
Okay.
So I made the jump. I was a GS-13, almost 2 years, and I decided to, as you know, I was tired of it. I wanted to do vulnerability management, pen testing.
Okay.
And so I made that leap out to the private sector. And what's interesting is a lot of the same things you deal with in the government, you have to deal with outside of the government. Mm-hmm. However, you get stuff through the pipeline a little bit faster. And there's a little bit more flexibility out here. But the architecture piece of that, it's really big.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Bigger than I would have ever thought. When I took this job, I didn't think like, we know that there's security involved in the casinos, but I was like, wait, they have whole security teams doing like SOC, NOC, architecture, all of these things. I didn't realize how big of an industry there is in the gaming world.
Right.
It's a different beast because there's different rules you have to follow. Mm-hmm. So in Nevada, they have gaming rules that, you have to have so many cameras on each table. Otherwise you can't operate. You have to have your systems online, 24/7 or you can't operate. Right. You're dealing with industrial control systems that the HVAC, the elevators, the lights, all of that stuff. And so
I was going to ask if there's a physical component to this as well then.
Oh yeah, there definitely is. So there's a difference, which is why it's really important that we encourage folks to go into ICS and IoT and
Okay.
that side of things, because there's a lot of that outside of the government, right? I think like 90% of critical infrastructure is maintained and operated by the private sector.
Yes. Okay.
So there's plenty of opportunities out there. But so far it's been fun.
Yeah.
You get to talk to a lot of different vendors. You get to see what new and emerging technologies are coming out.
Oh yeah. I'm sure casino
Oh my
industry is
gosh.
right at the cutting edge of what you
Yes.
can do with tech and money exchange.
Yes. And we're such big targets because of the money
that's the other
exchange.
thing. I'm imagining, without getting into details, I imagine you're under attack constantly, right?
Probably. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. I'd have to ask the stock about that.
Sure.
But why not? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we have business everywhere.
That's where the money is. Yeah.
You know, all of the casinos are everywhere. And so
Yes.
there's money, big money that can come out of these places.
And just one more question: is this sort of a one-time project where you're building the system and then they maintain it, or are you going to be? Is this sort of a long-term relationship with this particular?
So it depends on what the project is. If it's infrastructure related, we usually help design it, and then we let the infrastructure teams take it over.
Okay.
If it's specific to our department and there's no infrastructure involved, then we have a team of folks that can manage it within our team.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Sorry for.
We
don't get to talk to casino security people very often, so I wanted to get all the questions in. So let's talk specifically now about the Women's Society of Cyberjutsu. You are the CEO and one of the founding members of the organization. Can you tell me a little about the organization's origins and goals and the activities and projects you've been working on?
So we got our start in 2012. Lisa Jiggett's our founder and president. She had went to a few hacker meetups in the DC, Northern Virginia area. But she felt like she didn't really belong. She felt out of place. And she really just wanted to find a group of folks that she could hack with and learn with. And so she started the first workshop. It was Backtrack and Linux or Backtrack and Metasploit or something like that in 2012. And to her surprise, there was a lot of women that showed up because a lot of women wanted to do the same thing. They just couldn't find a place to do it where they felt comfortable and they could network with people.
Yep.
Come on, Light.
Put another dime in the machine.
Right. And so she decided to start the organization. She wanted to build a community of women that came together, that learned, that did penetration testing, incident response, digital forensics, reverse malware engineering, and just, did competitions together because we love to do the competitions. And so when I came to the organization, I had failed my CISSP by 4 points, and I was looking for a study group.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, let me find a study group in DC because I'm going to move back up there soon. And from there, I kept going to the workshops. I kept getting involved. I kept going to the networking events. And Lisa pulled me in and said, hey, I want you on my board.
Yeah.
7 years ago, almost now, I would have never thought we would be at this point.
Right.
2,600 plus members. We help thousands of women and men yearly. We help the girls. We just hosted our major event, Wicked Six Cyber Games, where cybersecurity meets esports for a cause, which was a really successful event. It's the first of its kind to showcase talent through short missions versus 6 to 8 hours of competition. And in these missions, they're doing real world analysis and having to do real world stuff, and they're dealing with WannaCry and Blue Keep and those kind of vulnerabilities, and having to look at packets and understand what's going on in packets. And that's one of our big things. We're doing it again next year, August the 6th.
Okay.
It was a really interesting experience because we did it here at the Luxor in their esporting arena. So on the big screens behind the players, you could see what they were doing. And then we had the shoutcasters explaining what was going on and, why this was important for them to do this or using these tools and things like that. And so that's one of our big goals. The other goals that we have, basically, we want to bring more women and minorities into cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, we are a women's organization. However, we do have male members. We do have male allies. We have the men that come in, they volunteer. They come into our networking events. They come in and do trainings with us.
Yep.
And so we understand that this is not just a one side only thing.
Right.
We have to have everybody in the conversation and have everybody at the table making these decisions.
Right.
We've got a couple of things coming up next year to help some more of the entry-level folks try to figure out which route to go. We have a Day in the Life series coming up where we'll bring in professionals and they'll talk about what they do day to day to kind of give an idea for those folks looking for a role. We also plan on doing trainings on malware analysis, threat intel. Hopefully we can get some virtual reality and AI stuff going on in there, just to help the women figure out, okay, we're interested in this. This is how I do X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm. Is this mostly, I know it says it's Northern Virginia based. Is it all over the country? Is it mostly in Northern Virginia? Or?
So we got our start in Northern Virginia. We are a national organization. So we do have chapters across the country. Mm-hmm. Vegas, SoCal, the Bay Area here soon, Atlanta, Jacksonville, Charlotte, East Carolina, which encompasses Raleigh, Durham, Fayetteville, and Jacksonville, North Carolina. And then the DC area has a chapter as well. So we're always looking to bring more women and more men in to help build out those chapters in those different locations to help do that training on site. 90% of all of our activities we do remotely. So we'll have an on-site component and then we'll have a remote component. That way folks that aren't in Las Vegas can still participate or watch the videos after the event has occurred. We try to do smaller networking events in each of those locations to help bring women and men together.
Right, face to face.
To network, to do career development, any of those areas where we can help the women be successful.
Yeah, and I have to imagine that the sort of on-site or the sort of remote component is going to be helpful in finding people who might feel that they're away from sort of like a center of activity and want to get started, but I'm in northern Wisconsin and I don't know anybody here and things like that. Is that the case? Have you sort of had people from like remote locations who felt like they're able to kind of get their start?
Yep.
Okay.
We've had a number. We actually have a woman that's in. She's not in Detroit, but she's near Detroit.
Okay.
But it's still probably like an hour or so away.
Sure.
So she participates in a lot of our stuff remotely because of that reason.
Yeah.
So we definitely see the importance of it. It's also good for folks that have families. You may not be able to come out of your house because you have to take care of kids or parents or something like that, but you still want to get that training. If you have disabilities, another way to do it as well. We wanted to make our trainings and our activities and events accessible to folks.
So what, can you tell me something about some of the accomplishments the organization's achieved, like some of the awards, citations? I've heard you had some pretty good ones.
So Lisa was the first CEO, obviously. She got tons of awards for building out WSC and building this community. She was recognized by SC Magazine. She's recognized as one of the top 50 women in cybersecurity. We're constantly making different lists about organizations to be a part of, what we provide. And we're up there with some of those other organizations that are doing some great stuff as well. And so to be in that same grouping is awesome. I just got an award for diversity for being a part of WSC from ISC Squared.
Oh, great.
Lisa got one of those awards in the very beginning as well.
Yeah.
So we definitely get the recognition. People definitely notice. I think a lot of times I just really like the name because it's different. Yeah. And it's like, wait, what does that mean?
It's memorable. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that portmanteau specifically? Where it came from?
Lisa is Japanese and Black. So she grew up in Japan and then she moved over to the States to join the military. And so she's also an artist. And so cyberjutsu is the art of cyber because jutsu means the art of. So it's the art of cyber.
Oh, there you go.
So she kind of felt that cybersecurity is like an art.
Sure.
You have to paint a picture. You have to, figure out how this looks, the bigger picture of it.
Yeah.
And so
it's a narrative. Yeah.
It's like you're painting a picture, basically. What does this look like? So that's where it came from.
Okay. So we want to talk, obviously we've started already talking about it, but one of our regular things we like to talk about is making the cybersecurity field more accessible to women. So what are some things? Obviously, your organization's a big part of that, but how do we sort of make the cybersecurity industry understand that more women in tech ultimately makes the entire industry stronger?
So it's a behavioral thing, and it's a mindset change that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely changing. There are tons of organizations that are working towards being more diverse in their hiring practices and bringing in more inclusion. Basically, they hire the diverse candidates and then they include them in the conversations about the day-to-day, what the strategy looks like. But I think the problem is, one, it's the hiring process. It sucks.
Yeah.
And everybody talks about it. We all know it. Job descriptions suck. I looked at a job description for a job that I really, really wanted. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then I was like, wait a minute, but I can't do like these next 6 things. But I could do these 4 things.
Yep.
But I wouldn't apply.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because I'm like, well, what if they ask me questions about the 6 things that I can't do? You know?
Right.
Changing the wording in the job descriptions and the posts will not only help bring in more women, but more minorities.
Yes.
And a more diverse group of people. Because a lot of folks won't apply for things if they don't feel they meet it 100%.
Right.
Being more flexible. A lot of the women that we've come across, they were their moms or their new moms, or they just had a baby and they're like, I can't leave my baby at home, or I can't take him to the daycare. So being able to be flexible with your work schedule, having options in the office that allow you to, if you're a nursing mom, you can still do your nursing thing during the workday.
Yep.
Paternal leave. The fathers need that too, right?
Yep,
They need time
absolutely.
off to bond with the baby that's new, or to help families. It's usually, the guys work, the women stay home, but that's changing. Yeah. And so having that flexibility, having those options available will only help bring more people to those companies that really need this. And then just showcasing and highlighting the fun stuff that goes on in the industry.
Yeah.
Right? It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
If you get breached, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. What's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fun experience to go through the process of like implementing your disaster recovery plan or your incident response plan or anything like that. Finding that first vulnerability and helping your organization. So showcasing that it's fun is also something that we can do.
Well, it's something you mentioned. I mean, we talk a lot about the sort of failures or difficulties of getting job descriptions right, and HR who want these unicorn candidates with 12 certs and 15 years of experience and a thing that's been around for 5 years and stuff like that. But also that that there's studies, specifically what you said, that women will look at a job description and say, I can only do 4 out of these 10 things, I'm not going to apply. A male candidate will look at the same thing and say, I can only do 2 of these 10 things, I'm going to apply anyway, and so there has to be sort of, this we need to sort of bring everyone up to the same mindset of like, a no is free. Let's at least see if we can do this, but also the converse of that is, we had another guest in here recently who said, like, I'm much more interested in finding out what your problem solving skills are than what certs you have.
Yep.
And that's going to be sort of a sea change across HR departments and cybersecurity departments in general, of like knowing what you're looking for. Right.
And how do you put, critical thinking skills or problem solving skills on a resume?
Right.
It's hard to put that there.
Yeah. And how do you test them quickly in an interview situation?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think changing that whole interview process, that dynamic, going away from simply looking at a resume and actually looking at, what are they doing on LinkedIn if they have it? What are they doing on other social media? Are they actively out, building labs or training people or, contributing to open source projects, things that you can't really put into writing, which means that the hiring managers are going to have to actually go out and do something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
A little bit more engaged.
We're going to have to step up a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some tips? We've had quite a few, but what tips would you give to women entering the world of security, and what are some of the common pitfalls that you've learned to sidestep over the years?
Take a risk.
Okay.
Just jump in and do it. There are going to be people that tell you can't do stuff. There are going to be people that try to rain on your parade daily. Just do it. The only thing they can do to you is make you hurt your feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can't take away your education, your training, your skills, none of that stuff. So just jump in and do it. Common pitfalls, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of introverted, even though people, if you think about it, I'm not really, but I do get shy around people.
Sure.
And so I try to avoid conflict when necessary. And so that's kind of one of those things that I kind of sidestep. I've learned over the years how to communicate with people to make sure there's no conflicts there.
Okay.
It's been a work in progress because there's a lot of times where I just want to tell them to, go jump in a pond and leave me alone. But
yeah.
You can't do that in the business world.
No.
You kind of have to be a little bit more professional. But that's
you got to do a lap around the office before you reply to that email there.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, okay, let me not reply to that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I've been told my second job, they were like, oh, you want to pull cables and install routers and switches? I was like, yeah. They're like, yeah, but you're so nicely dressed. I was like, what does that mean? I like to dress nice. I like to, I like to be nice. I can still run cables.
What's the implication then? People who run cables wear like sweatpants and Big Bang Theory t-shirts or something?
Wait, what? But it's the typical, if you think about a hacker, originally it was the black hoodie, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
That's changing.
The Cheetos and the Mountain Dew and
exactly. And so that was just the misconception of, well, if you're going to be doing the dirty stuff, you're going to have to look a certain way. And I was like, yeah, no, I can take these to the cleaners and it's done.
Right.
Not a big deal.
Okay. So another thing that I don't know if there's necessarily an answer to this, but or I mean, I know there is, but like it's going to be a big problem. But how do we sort of build the bench, so to speak, for female cybersecurity professionals in the industry? I mean, it seems like we're getting a good amount. We can always have more, but a lot of sort of entry level or incoming, women professionals. But diversifying the upper levels of management, the C-suites, and so forth seems like a taller order. Do you have any sort of strategies for female cyber professionals, and especially for organizations who want to sort of hire upwards and sort of promote, women and people of color and diverse candidates more quickly?
Right. So there's definitely a few organizations out there. Executive Women's Forum. Okay. It's a group of executives that's run by Joyce. And they help women get on the board of organizations. They help them develop their leadership skills and that training. There's also another one that they just started, but they do the same kind of thing with like mentoring and for the upper levels, minorities in cybersecurity. That's another good organization run by Mary Cheney. ICMCP, they have some areas where they do stuff for that higher level. But for companies, it's probably very important that they implement some kind of mentoring program within the organization. We all know mentoring helps significantly. Having somebody to help bounce ideas off of is very important. Having a sponsor, that's somebody that's going to go to bat for you in an industry, in a job. Having those kind of people are very important. And having that pathway of, if somebody says, how do I go from being an engineer to a manager? Having that already drawn out of what that looks like, what kind of things you need to do inside of the organization, trainings, going to these kind of events, connecting with executive coaching companies, which can be kind of expensive, but I know that there is value in those kind of companies because they help you understand your weaknesses and how to go about either enhancing those or working with those to become a better leader. So I think too, women just need to see that there's a pathway to that world. Everybody doesn't want to be technical forever.
Right.
And so having that visually out there to say, hey, you can do all of these things to get to this point is definitely helpful. And then keeping the finish line at the same place. So don't say these are the things you need to do to get to X, and then you move the finish line to Y.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel about the sort of progression of this at the moment? I mean, it seems painfully slow, but do you see sort of promising signs out there for this sort of thing?
I think so. As more as more allies come out and as more men are coming out to say, hey, I want to mentor, hey, I want to help get more women speakers, or hey, I want to
Right.
help do whatever. I think there's definitely a shift happening.
Yes.
There are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to help fix the issue.
Yes.
But it's a big issue, right? You're having to change people's mindsets, and that's hard.
Unfortunately, a lot of resistance too. Yeah.
Yes, that's difficult because people don't want to just be promoted because of their gender or their race or their disability. They want to be promoted on merit. And so changing that dynamic
and they'd also rather not be hearing constantly, even if they were promoted on their merit. Well, you just got promoted because of this or that or the other thing.
Right.
Yeah, which is irritating.
Sucks.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
You see it on Twitter all the time.
Oh, God. Oh, Twitter. Oh, boy. Less said, the better. Yeah. So, well, I could talk to you all day. This has been fantastic. But as we wrap up today, can you give us a little teaser of some of the big projects and initiatives or sort of exciting developments that Women's Society of Cyberjutsu will be undertaking in 2020 and beyond?
So, as I mentioned, we're going to do Wicked 6 again.
Okay.
We're trying to see if we can expand it into colleges and professionals, so that the professionals can play on the platform as well and kind of, level up and scores and all that. Yeah. Ideally, we want to make Wicked 6 like a recruiting event. So you come in, you play the game, the recruiters can see what skills you've gained from playing those missions inside of the platform. We get digital badges. We had some for last year, which is kind of cool. So it shows you, okay, I have these skill sets. We're going to do our annual awards event again. Annual Cyberjutsu Awards. It'll be the 7th one. Yay. Recognizing women and men for their contributions to cybersecurity. Usually we recognize men as a special award every year. This year we're actually putting that category into rotation so people can nominate folks for that particular role, and just bring more visibility to what folks are doing to help bring in more diversity. Yeah. We're also going to be doing more workshops. We're having more chapters launched. Ideally, I'd want to do a conference, maybe virtually. Okay. All right. That's kind of a big thing.
Can you give me like a 5-year plan? What's like the big cyberjutsu version? Like what do you like? Yes, we did it. Yeah. What does that look like?
Being international, we want to be able to expand internationally. We also want to be able to bring in a paid CEO. So I don't get paid. None of our volunteers get paid. Yeah. But running a nonprofit and working a full-time job is a lot of work.
Yes.
Right? And it's a very active nonprofit. And so we're constantly doing stuff. We're constantly moving. And we've gotten a lot of great volunteers in place to do a lot of great things. And so 2020 and beyond, it's going to be even better. And hopefully we'll be international. We've got a lot of interest internationally. And so that's one of our big plans.
Cool. So if people want to know more about Mary Galloway or get involved with Women's Society of Cyberjutsu or any related organizations, where can they go online?
So they can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Okay. Women's Cyberjutsu. On the website, it's womenscyberjutsu.org. So jitsu is JUTSU.org. They can come check us out. Sign up for our emailing list. Down at the very bottom, there's a little ninja throwing an envelope. They can click that. And love it. We just had a website redesign. And so it's kind of a big deal because we've had the same website for years. And we're launching our job board.
Oh, good. Week. Okay.
Yeah, next week. So it's in a new and improved career center for our members and for those that want to find jobs and experiences like that. So womenscyberjutsu.org is our website. If you want to reach me, mary.galloway@womenscyberjutsu.org. I check my emails out often. 3 in the morning, I'm checking email. 1 in the morning, I'm checking email when I'm supposed to be asleep.
You're supposed to be sleeping. Yeah, we talked about that before, but yeah.
Yeah. And so we look forward to bringing sponsors, donors, everybody in we can to help bridge this gap.
Yeah, we're pleased as Punch to be sort of affiliated with you guys as well. So I'm looking forward to.
We're excited for you guys to be partnered with us as
more collaboration in the future. All right. Well, Mary Galloway, thank you again so much for joining us today. This was super educational and fun, and I hope everyone who's out there listening goes checks out your organization.
Yes, thank you.
And thank you all today, as always, for listening and watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you can find many more on our YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com and type in Cyberwork with Infosec to check out our collection of tutorials, interviews, and past webinars. If you'd rather have us in your ears during your workday, all of our videos are also available as audio podcasts. Just search Cyberwork with Infosec in your podcast catcher of choice. To see the current promotional offers available to listeners of this podcast, go to infosecinstitute.com/podcast. And as we've been saying last couple weeks, we have a free election security training resource, which you can use to educate your local poll workers and volunteers on the cybersecurity threats they may face during the election season. For information about how to download your training packet, visit infosecinstitute.org/IQ/election-security-training, or click the link in the description. Thank you once again to Mary Galloway, and thank you all for watching and listening. We'll speak to you next week.